Couple of scorching hot takes. One not as hot as the other, but let's go for the hot take. Mailbag is always open. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at Locked On Ducks. If you want priority access and a bunch of other perks, go become a Locked On Ducks insider. That link in the description below, wherever you listen to or watch this show. 8 days to Oregon football, by the way. This question, or this hot take, I mean surface of the sun hot, came from Darius. Hot take, you got it. Dillon Gabriel will have at least 5 games with 500 passing yards this year. Okay. It's one thing if you'd said 5 games with 400 yards. Like, that'd be a hot take, but a little bit more feasible. 5 games with 500 passing yards? What? Darius, my man. Let's have a talk, you and me. What sort of offense do you think Oregon is running here? Frankly, if Dillon Gabriel were going to go for 500 yards, which I believe would be a career high, I don't think he's done that before, because most quarterbacks haven't thrown for half 1,000 yards in a single game before. Illinois might be one where that could happen. They are not a great team. Now, they're not in the early part of a rebuild, for instance, but that could be a game. Idaho's a game where that could happen if Dillon Gabriel stays in long enough, which I don't anticipate happening, but 5 games with 500 yards passing, there are 2 reasons this can't happen. Number 1, it's incredibly hard to do. You have to have a 500-yard passing game. And to do that in half of Oregon's regular season games. You're not doing it in a postseason game. The teams you'll be playing will be far too good. 5 games? Almost half? I don't even know which 5 those would be. Idaho would be one. Oregon State would probably be another. Boise State, I suppose, just because they're a Mountain West team. So those would be the games. And then Illinois, maybe Maryland when they come to town. But I mean, Ohio State, you're not doing that. Michigan, you're not doing that. Wisconsin on the road, you're not doing that. Washington, even though they have a lot of turnover, I don't think you're doing that there either. That might be the hottest take ever submitted on this show. I'm not even kidding. Not even kidding. That might be the hottest take yet. If you wanted me to rate that on the Josh Pate boldness scale, can I give that an 11 out of 10? That won't happen. I think a more interesting question, though, and realistic one, is how many games does Dillon Gabriel go over 300 yards this year? I'd certainly expect it. Would I expect it against Idaho? Oregon might be able to run all over the field against Idaho, and you've got a really talented lineup of running backs who you might want to get some carries to, like Jade Lamar and Jay Harris, get them some run. Does Dillon Gabriel go for 300 yards against Idaho? Probably. Because I imagine Evan Stewart and Tez Johnson will just run by a lot of the guys that are going to attempt to guard them, and they probably won't do so very successfully. But how many times would Dillon Gabriel be over 300 yards? That's a question I just made up for myself as kind of a spinoff of this surface of the sun scorching hot take from Darius. I'd probably go with 8. I think 8 is probably the number. I don't think he'll have a game under 200 yards, including Michigan and Ohio State. I think that's too low of a threshold. I don't think Bo Nix had a game under 200 yards. Bo Nix didn't have that many games under 300 yards passing in his Oregon career. I think Gabriel probably have 8 or 9. The Ohio State-Michigan games, be tougher. Those are legit defenses. They got a lot of big-time players, Ohio State especially. I think Ohio State's got a more talented defense altogether. But, yeah, I think Gabriel's capable of going with this receiving core and the offensive line if fully healthy, and even if they have to figure out what the interior rotations are like, if Bedford is still battling an injury or if he comes back and gets re-injured, you still have 2 NFL tackles, and you still have a third-year experienced starter in Marcus Harper, who has been with Oregon for a long time, and he's going into his 3rd year as a starter. So there are at least 3 guys that I know for certain are studs. Bona fide studs, contributed to some of the lowest sack numbers, maybe the lowest sack numbers over a multi-year span I've ever seen for Oregon football. So, how many games? Debate that in the comments section or shoot me a note. How many games, regular season only, just regular season? You'll see why I'm emphasizing that in just a moment. Just regular season, how many games does Dillon Gabriel go over 300 yards? Let me know. Here's another hot take. Nick says that Jordan James can get to 1,500 yards. Now, if you missed a conversation from earlier in the week, the take was that Jordan James gets to 1,300 yards, which on the surface I said, whoa, hot take. I don't think that can. And then I looked at it and went, well, actually, that's kind of feasible. If he's actually RB1, even if you have a solid complementary back in Noah Whittington, which I expect him to, guess what? backs have come very close. Royce Freeman 2017 was the last guy to go over 1,300 yards, but guys have come close. Bucky Irving came close. Troy Dye, Travis Dye. Aha, see, almost slipped him up right there. Travis Dye, he came close as well in 2021. That was, aided partially by CJ Verdell going down, but still, it's possible. So 1,500 yards. So I saw that and went, man, that's asking a lot. You would really be committed to Jordan James as an RB1. And I don't think there's ever been a time really in the Oregon backfield where you've had a true number one workhorse. And what I mean by that is where you have a guy not who isn't capable of being a workhorse, but who isn't going to get the ball 30 to 35 times. Think like Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin over the years, or Blake Corum even Blake Corum had a great backup. That's what Oregon has always had, is they've had a number two guy. There was LaMichael, but then there was Kenyon. You never had to solely rely on LaMichael. You worked in a number two running back pretty consistently. I expect this backfield to be that as well. I think Jordan James will be the number one, but I don't think Whittington's that far behind him. I think there will be days where Oregon fans, like last year, where there were days when Oregon fans were clamoring for more Jordan James touches and fewer Bucky Irving touches. I think you could have that this year. Not because James isn't talented, because Noah Whittington's really good. And I don't want people to forget that. I'm a big Noah Whittington fan. But Nick had a follow-up comment that I caught before I came on to record the show. He said, just think about why I said that. Oregon is sitting with a decent chance at playing up to 16 games this year. Now, I had not considered that. Assuming they play 15, then James needs to average 100 yards a game. I don't think it's unreasonable to think he'll average 100 yards per game this year. Well, that's a good way of looking at it. How many games will Oregon play this year? It should, if all goes according to plan, at least 14. At least, bare minimum. To have a successful season, Oregon's got to play 14 games. That would imply that you have either played in the Big Ten championship and gotten into the playoff, or missed the Big Ten championship but won a first-round playoff game. Either one of those things. If Oregon plays 14 games, as they did last year, that is a real possibility. If James can get to 1,500 yards, 100 yards a game, yeah, I think it's reasonable. Especially, we were talking about Illinois earlier in today's show. Don't expect a lot of resistance there. And there were a number of games like that. Maryland, don't know that they're going to be great. Purdue could be okay. Like Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, probably in that order, they're going to be tough to run the football on. But Washington should be able to run the football. First 3 games of the year, Oregon should be able to run the football a lot. I'm interested to see if Jordan James has a 200-yard game in any of the first 3 contests this year. I think he's more than capable. I think this Oregon offensive line, even without Matthew Bedford in there, still has a much, much bigger advantage, or just has a significant advantage, is a better way to put that, than every defensive line they're going to go up against. I think Boise State or Oregon State clearly offers more resistance than Idaho, but this is a big gap. This is one of the 10 best offensive lines in all of college football, and George James could absolutely go off. And could he average 100 yards a game by the end of the year? Yeah, I could see it. I could see it. You get that offensive line healthy, you get him cooking, I could see that happening. So that take on the surface, hot take. But if you think about it with the postseason factor, not as hot as it seems.